So we find ourselves in an interesting space right now as a church that is approaching its bicentennial year in 11 years' time. We have been around for a while. In fact, First Church weathered the pandemic of the early 1900s, 1918 to 1920, and we find ourselves again in extraordinary times. We are gathering in a time of great change. I don't know if you were following yesterday, but I had Sky News running the last couple of days, and one of the commentators said a few times during the course of the day that with the Queen's passing comes the end of the age of deference. The end of the age of deference. And I think that we have been experiencing that in the church for, say, the last 20 years. We've been on a slow cycle of seeing the effects of the end of the age of deference. In other words, people don't just come to church because it's the thing to do in polite society and everything else is closed on Sunday mornings. People now have options for community and connection. And those of us who are gathered in the room today are making a choice to be here, to show up for our community. And we know that there are many others in our church community who are equally as committed to the life of this church. They just now have other demands on their time, as we do on ours. And so we have reached a point in our societal life where it's no longer assumed that this is the place to be seen on a Sunday morning, the place you have to be once a week to qualify as a good citizen or as somebody of good conscience. So where does that leave us as the church? The church is no less valuable in society. In fact, arguably, the church can regain its voice, can hone its ability to speak to society in meaningful ways, as we hunker down to those of us who are here by choice because it really means something, because we really want to make a difference in the world for our faith and because of our faith. So the heart and soul doesn't necessarily die as our pews become emptier. In some ways, we are winnowed down to what really matters, to people who really want to be present. Now, again, we know that societal trends are shifting. We can feel them even in our own lives. And so, yes, there were some folk who were here last Sunday who are not here this Sunday. And there may be others who are here next Sunday who are not here today in the room. Some are only worshiping online now. Some are not even worshiping online on Sunday mornings with us live. There are members of our community who consider themselves to be as committed as if they were sitting in the pew who participate in church on a Monday night. And so how do we find ourselves in the midst of all of these changes? How do we come to understand ourselves? And how do we ensure, as the generation that is stewarding First Church at this time, you, me, its members, that the church is here to serve God in this place for another 200 years. We tend to the spirit and the soul. We remind ourselves that each one of us has a part to play in tending the spirit and the soul of this place. Now, I'm going to push a little, and I don't mean to cause any offense. But I don't think First Church has always been good at doing this. I want to say, as the person who served you for the past going on 8 years now, that it hasn't always been my experience. And I know it hasn't always been yours. First Church is great at welcoming people. Amen? We really are. And within certain circles, we're really good at caring for one another. But there are some places where we need to grow. There are some places we need to tend. There are some things we need to change. We need to start being honest with one another. We need to start being able to have direct conversations with one another. And we need to gather around our purpose once again, to bless one another and to bless the world from this place. We do that so very well when we're doing something. We're really good as a church at working together. We pack grocery bags together. We produce beautiful music together. But sometimes our relationships aren't as connected as they should be. And I think one of the big reasons for that is that the church has been changing more and more rapidly, just like the rest of society. And it is a challenge. It's not anyone's personal intent, but it is a challenge to constantly reach out and draw in the folk who are joining us newly, right? It's easy for us to know the people we know and not really get to know the people who are new. I feel that. I see that as someone who's only been here for the last 8 years. And so the challenge for us, whether we arrived today, whether we arrived 2, 3, 4 years ago, or 30, 40, 50 years ago, the challenge is for us to renew our sense of tending the soul and the spirit of our collective work together so that we can renew and tend once again to one another's spirit and soul, from our youngest members all the way up to our oldest members. As we approach our 200th anniversary, I invite each one of us, and we're going to engage, as we always do, in different ways in the community, at different times in our lives, in different seasons, to different extents. But for whatever way that we're involved in the church, I think our theme for the next few years, our sense of ourselves emerging from this time of extreme isolation, needs to be tending to the spirit and the soul of our church, as we tend for the world beyond our walls. Not to draw us in on ourselves and to become insular, but to equip and strengthen ourselves internally for the work that God is calling us to. I see such hope and such promise in this time, even, hear me, on a day when we don't make quorum. Because, hey, in the middle of the pandemic, they changed annual meetings to semi-annual meetings, and who knows what's really going on, right? I mean, it's hard to keep track. But even in the midst of a time when we perhaps don't make quorum, or we perhaps see fewer people in the pews, I have hope, friends. I have hope. Do you know why? Do you know why? Because you're here. Because you're here. Because you showed up today. And because I know that those of our community who are not gathered today are also present. Through the course of this pandemic, I would get really down. Well, first of all, it was just really hard to produce worship to an empty room. Really difficult. But then I got down because we would do things and I wouldn't see folk and I would miss them and I would wonder, are they okay? What are they doing? Are they okay in the middle of this pandemic? And every time I made a phone call, every time I reached out, people spoke about how much the church meant to them. This church has made such a difference in my life. You all have been there in the tough times. And I know that the church has made a difference in your life. It's what drew you over the threshold again today. And I know that there are many more people out there, part of our community, who feel the touch of this church. Your touch. Our touch. Change will happen no matter what. I heard a voice behind me earlier when we were commemorating the passing of our members saying, all of my friends all of my friends. It is tough sometimes to come back to a place year after year where we watch folk pass. It is tough to be in a space where we have the tough conversations. It is tough to be in a place where we see the changes around us echoing. But isn't it also true that we're in a place where hope renews itself over and over again, and no matter how tough our lives get, it's a place where we see hope and promise happen with every single grocery bag that is packed, with every single beautiful strain of music, with every single picture of every single event? Wasn't that amazing? Do you realize we did all that stuff this year, and it's not even all of it? Did you feel during that video presentation, if I have to see another photo of, really? But wasn't it also amazing and renewing and rejuvenating? First Church has stood the test of time. Akron's oldest church. But we are not a museum or a mausoleum. We are a vibrant, thriving church. And I am hope-filled and hopeful for our future. Amen.